Everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks and Modern Campground. Excited to welcome you here to our last episode of the year. It's crazy how fast 2025 has gone by, right, guys? I feel like it just started a few months ago, and then you get to this new point in January where I have this whole new year, and then boom, it's November again. And it's conference season and everything else. But all good things, hopefully, for everybody. We'll chat about some of that stuff today. But our last episode of the year for guest experience topics, and then I think next week we have a wrap-up show of the whole year, and then we take 2 weeks off for the holidays. So exciting stuff going on. Welcome Jeremy Johnson, who's going to be one of our recurring guests. I'll let you introduce yourself in a second, Jeremy. Tyler Duffy from Camp Life, who's our special guest. Greg Rose, who I can't see his picture, but is the president of something. And he'll introduce himself. It's where?
Camp Nauvoo in Placerville, California.
Camp Nauvoo in Placerville, California. Do you have a video, Greg, or?
No, I do not.
Okay. Well, and then we have Joe Duemig from @Mike. Welcome back, Joe. So you guys want to go briefly around and just introduce yourselves for the audience who does not know all of you gentlemen? Whoever wants to start.
So I'm Joe Duemig from @My Community. We make mobile apps for RV parks. Been on here for a couple of years. I don't get in as much as I should, but been getting busier and busier every month. So
that's a good problem to have, right, Joe?
That's right.
So we appreciate you having you here. Tyler?
Yeah, Tyler Duffy, Camp Life. We have reservation and property management software across the U.S. and Canada.
That's it? No, big tout of we're the longest, oldest, most premium, come join us Camp Life thing?
It sounds better when you say it. Yeah, we've been next year.
My bullshit for so many years. That's why.
Yeah, next year we'll be celebrating 20 years. It's for a tech company. I feel like I should have more gray hair. That's
you
old.
Should, man. Maybe you're not working hard.
That's a lot of that's a lot.
Well, you could have no hair. It only took us 7 years before I had no hair. So.
Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm Jeremy. I own Kona Hills Campground in Marquette, Michigan. Just had our first year in 2025 and closed up for the winter, but getting ready for next year, building a couple cabins, and also planning for future winter recreation opportunities going forward.
Awesome. Excited to have you here, Jeremy, this week and as a recurring guest in 2026 to talk about guest experience. And then last but not least, Mr. Greg Rose. I'm sorry we can't see you, Greg.
Yeah, I'm sorry you can't see me too, but maybe that's okay because I don't have any hair either. So it's, we're all good. We operate an 86-acre campground in Placerville, California, kind of halfway situated between Sacramento and beautiful Lake Tahoe. We don't do RV camping, but we do everything else camping wise. We don't have cabins, but we have glamping tents down to dirt camping. And we also operate a wedding venue, which is probably half of our business. So we do weddings, some family reunions, corporate retreats. We actually have been there 10 years. We bought it from the Boy Scouts and had to do major upgrades after they neglected it for 10 years.
What was the worst thing the Boy Scouts did to it?
Well, when we bought it, it was to buy it as is. And, some of that stuff is true to word. They were very honest. They tried to sell it to me without a well, but the well was working when I looked at the property. So they had to fix that. But they had a beautiful meadow where we do our weddings. And it was pretty much a dirt meadow when we bought the property. That was probably the hardest thing to come back from.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you did. Looking forward to talking more about your property in a few minutes. So to our recurring guests here, they're typically how we kick this off. Joe knows Jeremy are new, but we kind of just ask in the last month since we've been together, is there anything that's come across your guys' desk that you specifically think we should be chatting about this week? No?
In terms of guest experiences, I got to say, where I'm going, at least in where my mind has been at lately, especially seeing people like Travis Chambers or Ben Wolf is the immersive side. And for me, like, I think they're focused on two different things. Travis is really focused on like that fantasy world, where Ben is really focused on health and wellness. And for me and where I'm at in my property, I'm thinking about how to integrate. We live in a place where we get 300 inches of snow every year in the Midwest. You can't get that experience anywhere else unless you're on the West Coast or in the mountains. And so that's what I've been thinking a lot about lately, and just seeing what other people are doing with that immersion, and how can I incorporate that into my guest experience.
What are some early ways that you're tossing around in your head? Because that's one of the things that, like, we've talked to many owners here who, some of which are like, I'm out, it's the end of the season, I want to go to Florida, rightfully so. I've dealt with the kids all year, or the families, or the screaming people, or whatever. But there are many other people who are like, I want to extend my season a little bit, push maybe into the winter. I'm seeing reports from Scott Barr and KOA about how winter camping is of interest to people. There's obviously tons of activities like snowshoeing and hiking and things that I enjoy in Calgary that is the same for you in the UP probably.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you're thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, so I had a chance to run into Zach Stoltenberg while we were in Kentucky, a lot of us together. And Zach was telling me about a project that he just finished about, I think, 45 minutes north of the Twin Cities. And none of what he told me was surprising, but I know he was surprised by it, and I think the rest of the country is. But their summer season is basically, call it May 15th through October 15th, same as mine. We got 5-6 months. That's really it. And 4 of them are good. Right. And, they were going through the due diligence with this couple in just outside of the Twin Cities, almost northern Minnesota, not quite. And he was like, I just don't think the numbers are going to work. But, to his surprise, not to the couple's surprise, they killed it during the winter. People from the Twin Cities were going up and booking these domes all year round. And I think at like a very basic level, it's just the novelty of it. Like, if you could see it, if my window wasn't washed out here right now, I'm in a snow globe. You can't get that in the city. And like, it's just a cool experience. I think people crave novelty. And then beyond that, like, simple fact of being in a novel experience, like, we're thinking about winter recreation at a pretty high level. And I'm lucky that we have a local economic development group that's focused on that. We have one of the largest sled dog races in Marquette, Michigan, next to the Iditarod. It's a qualifying event, actually. We have a massive fat tire biking community up here. And then skiing as well, snowshoeing, skiing, people that are doing things like teleskiing and backcountry skis. I actually just saw today that the Marquette backcountry skis are being relaunched after like a 5-year copyright infringement issue with backcountry.com. So there's all these niche sports that I think we can embrace and share that culture with other people. And then the last one, which is like kind of off the wall, but ice climbing. Munising, Michigan, 40 minutes down the road from me, is actually home to the largest ice festival in Michigan, and maybe North America at this point. It's been running for 25, 26 years, and people from all over the world, Europe, Asia, come to climb ice at Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. It's becoming a bigger and bigger sport. And that's something that, we see as it's something that we can continue, especially when I look at places like, again, in northern Minnesota, Sandstone, Minnesota, or Winona, Minnesota, that have repurposed old quarry walls to artificially farm ice and have people climb on it. So they're like these weird things that are kind of niche, but I think people find very novel. And that's what people are craving these days. They want that new experience. So that's what we're leaning into. And that's a massive way we plan to extend our season throughout the whole year, when we live in a place that is, below zero, below freezing, sometimes below zero, and gets 300 inches of snow every year.
I'm curious your thoughts on this because there's a lot of good nuggets in what you just said, but one that I'm curious about from your perspective is the difference between, if there is one, novelty and guest experience. Because novelty brings people in, but does novelty make people come back?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have the answer 100% to it. But I think, and I was actually just listening to a podcast with Vince Kadlubek, who is the founder of Meow Wolf. And I did like a 6-month stint with them in Santa Fe way back in 2015. But he was talking about this ability to understand, he's like Travis Chambers, where he's coming at it from like a more of a fantasy perspective. But he was just talking about the ability to understand your guest at a deeper level and react based on that information. So like his thing was, he was talking about, I think it was Star Wars, right? And he's like, sure, I'm going on a Star Wars ride at Universal or whatever, or Disney, whatever theme park it is. But does that ride know that I've watched every single Star Wars movie 15 times and I've spent, 500 hours in the Star Wars universe, compared to maybe the person sitting next to me who's only, casually watched those. And so I think that's where, like, to your point, Brian, and getting people back, like that experience has to continue to evolve. If you come back for a second visit and you're getting the same exact experience that you saw, that novelty wears off. But if I know as an operator that this person is on their second, third, or fourth visit, I can adapt that experience on my end as a host and as a hospitality provider.
I would love to see Disney building in 20 years where I can go through a ride and it would know all that, and then the next time I go through the ride, it's different. I feel like AI and robots might make that happen in 20 years. That would be super cool.
Well, Meow Wolf is going to do it before Disney. Quote me on that.
Go ahead.
One thing, your question there about creating repeat customers, and looking at the data from our system, we've got in 2024, we were at 87% repeat customers. So a lot of customers were repeat customers. We've seen that percentage drop in 2025 into the high 70s, but those repeat customers are a good portion of stays, at least for an average across all of our campgrounds. What are you doing to attract your repeat customers, and do you track that at all, Jeremy?
So we just had our first year, so I haven't had any quite. Well, that's not true. So we had quite a few repeat customers throughout the year, actually, and I do track it in our booking software and CRM, and we didn't do anything necessarily to attract it. I think right now our key value prop for those people is our location and the convenience of it. I know, like, for example, one of our best customers this year, and when I say best, I mean like recurring, right? Andy's a great guy too, him and his wife. But they're outdoor adventure guides, and they live about 40 minutes away. But a lot of their guiding experiences take place in Marquette because we're such a central location. And then they might go up to 550 on Lake Superior, or they might head west into like the McCormick Wilderness or something. But they stayed with us because of the convenience, and I think that's a factor you can't overlook as well. And then going forward, our focus is really on year-over-year improvements. We started with just 30 rustic camping sites, nothing more than that. And so one of our goals in terms of development is every year when people come back, there's something new for them. We opened with porta potties. Like, I'm not necessarily proud of that fact, but we did.
Hey, you opened the doors, right?
Yeah. Yep. And next year we'll have permanent vault toilets. And in year 3, I'll have flushing toilets, like that's the goal for us.
Going back to Brian's question about niche versus novelty, I think one of the things with that would be size would matter as well. If you're a smaller campground and you're catering to a niche audience, sure, it's a novelty, but you can only have so many people there in a year. And so it allows for you to, not necessarily rely on the repeat customers, especially if you're going off of something that has staying power, some sort of fantasy experience that has staying power versus jumping on something that's brand new. So, not that it'd be easy to do a Star Wars theme thing because you have so much IP that you have to deal with. But if you had something that was Star Wars themed, like it's got staying power for the past 50 years, and so you're going to have, even if it was a novelty, you're going to have a few repeat customers, but you're going to have enough new people in the doors that it doesn't matter unless you're a couple hundred sites, and then you have to worry a lot more on your repeat customers, I would think.
Yeah, but your customer acquisition costs on a new customer is higher than a repeat customer.
Possibly not for a type of novelty item like this, right? Because you're going to end up, I would imagine they would end up having a lot of virality and things like that would go with it.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the level of novelty, right? Like,
Right.
is it
Right.
like because years ago when we first started really glamping in the U.S. 6-7 years ago, right? And there was glamping before that, but you understand what I'm saying? Before it became really popular, then like having a bell tent was a novelty, having a yurt was a novelty, and like it sort of still is, but not really. Now you have to level up your experience a little bit more to create a novelty, at least within the specter of people who have always gone glamping.
Yeah, I don't know what Travis's acquisition cost is for Outpost X, but I mean, I bet it's pretty low, and it's mostly production costs because of that virality of his videos. He puts that out, and people come from all over to the middle of nowhere, Utah, to stay in his building. And I think similarly, when you look at glamping, I've got a friend down in Crystal Mountain, just outside of Traverse City, who he's putting the first glass house unit in Michigan, and he happens to be a videographer, and he's amazing at production. So he puts out a video, and guess what? On Instagram, on Facebook, there's 100,000 views in 24 hours. That lowers his cost of acquisition quite a bit, I'm sure.
Greg, how do you think about this?
And we started with the glamping and the dirt camping because that was kind of my background. And when you go way back to talk about your repeat customers, I'm a solid 75% of my guests are repeat customers, and probably at least half of the rest of the customers are all word of mouth by the people who are already staying with us. And I experience the same thing where I get repeats the same year. There's one gal that comes in every year, and her daughter's adopted me, but she's it was 3 times this past year, her husband and the little girl, and you see them grow every year. And a lot of times we are used as a base camp as well because we're so close to Lake Tahoe and a wilderness area and that type of thing. And then we have a place called Apple Hill, which draws in all kinds of people commercially for our area. So we get that repeat stuff. We've added stuff every year as well. Actually, we went to a tree fort idea this past year to give people another option. We don't use a lot of money in marketing, and so there's a word of mouth goes a long, long ways for us.
Well, that lowers your cost per acquisition too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Another statistic from our system. Over the last year, we did a data on how far people are traveling to get to your park or your resort. I don't know if I can share my screen here.
Yeah, you can. You should be able to in the bottom, and then Jessica will just have to add it to the screen. But while you do that, yeah, and I'd be curious too, Tyler, if you have a sense of how that repeat number went from 84 to 70. Because you have a lot of good data you collect. I remember being super impressed I didn't make it to the Canadian show this year because I was in France at their show, but last year I remember being impressed in Ontario about how you had all that really interesting data that you shared.
Can you guys see this? I'm sharing.
Yes.
Yep. Yes.
Over the last year, so the average distance people had traveled was 305 miles, but if you look at like a bell chart, almost 60% of travelers are coming from less than 100 miles away. And then you're hovering around 5% for all the other distances up until you get 700-800 miles. You have a little bit of a bump. So, a good full day's travel, you're you've got a little bit of a bump, but a vast majority of people are coming from less than 100 miles away.
Which is what we expect to see. Like, is that a big change over 2024? Do you think 2023?
No, it isn't really much of a change. We're just, we've looked at averages and distances and different things, but we hadn't put it into a chart that was just showing the percentages of where they're coming from.
Because I think that's what Scott Barr has seen quite a bit in his data and his research for KOA and some other organizations, is that as the economy and other external factors happen, like people are obviously shortening the amount that they're willing to travel to go to their parks. Like, you've seen that, right, Joe, too, at some of the places you deal with? Or no?
Somewhat. A lot of the places that we deal with are going to be long-term stays. So we deal with a lot of long-term stays and a lot of destinations. And I think that they have a little less of the they're kind of at an end where people are going there because they go there, as opposed to, no one's going to go to winter Florida because they live in winter or live in Florida, so, they're still going to be traveling. And then, when you look at the big mega parks that are 1,000 sites, I doubt that I haven't ran data on it, but I doubt that their travel has changed quite a bit over the years.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I'm speaking mostly of transient parks when I say that.
Yeah.
Data.
Well,
Yeah.
and I mean the large transient parks, the ones that are, have the huge water parks and stuff like that. They're getting they're getting the repeat customers like we were talking about, whether those repeat customers are from 200 and 300 miles away or 100 miles away. That is their summer vacation. I would imagine the parks that are more, the 1 to 200 sites that offer a few amenities, you might be able to find a very similar park closer to home, sort of thing.
That's fair. Like, I mean, especially in the Myrtle Beach areas and things like that, right? I mean, that's your destination, that's your summer vacation.
Exactly.
It would be interesting to do a study on the yogis, for just picking out yogis because you're talking about water parks, for example. Like, how much does the actual water park versus location matter? That would be an interesting study. Like, I don't know which way it would lean, but because there are so many yogis now, and
Right.
with those big water parks, does the water park draw as many people from so many hours away as it used to? That would be interesting.
Yeah, if they have one that's closer to them and they go to that one that's closer instead of the one that's further. And I think that makes a lot of sense because of the brand. The brand, a lot of them over the past 8 years have upgraded. When we started 8 years ago, a lot of the parks were really nice, and some were kind of hit or miss. Now they all have pretty heavy amenities, it seems, and they're a little more on par with each other. You definitely still have standouts, but I think now that that's the case, and there's more. There's more of them. When we started our business, there was two of them that were within a couple hours of us. Now there's 4, so it's kind of doubled in terms of our size.
But that goes back to what we're talking about with guest experience, what Jeremy is bringing up too, and things like that. Is that it's not always the multi-million-dollar water park. That's the difference maker. You could put that in, and then one could come, like you're saying, 2 to 4 in the years that you've been there or more, and then that's no longer the difference maker from a guest experience standpoint. But it could be something as small as the organic soap in the bathroom, or the curation of the ice climbing, or right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important for you, not you, but all the people who are watching the show who are trying to figure all this stuff out, to understand that you need to figure out who your audience is, who your people are, why they're coming to you, and then go after those small individual things that are going to make their stay really special and memorable, right? Is that fair, Jeremy?
I think that's fair. I mean, Brian, maybe I told you this when we were in Kentucky, but I mean, we had people come to us, I would say, primarily for 2 reasons right now. And one is because of the convenience of our location, but then 2, because of the on-site experience. We're 80 acres, but we only have, we ended the year with 35 sites. We'll be up to 40 next year. So across our 80 acres, even at max capacity, we're 40 sites. That's pretty significant spacing. And I mean, we had people that would come and stay at another park, maybe a mile or 2 away on Friday night, but then on Saturday night, they would book with us and say, hey, we heard about you from a neighbor or a restaurant in town, and we had to get, we were a tent sandwiched between two RVs, and we had to switch over here, and there was even a moment where like this was like a kind of odd moment in reservation, but early in our season, we had someone book who ended up emailing at like 1 a.m. saying, "Hey, I just want you to know, like, I left because I didn't see anybody else around. I was a little scared. It felt like I was the only person out here in the woods." And like, we felt really bad for that person, and we emailed them and had a great conversation. But like, that's the point of our park, like, to feel like you're in the woods by yourself. Like, we set it up that way on purpose. So it was like and then if you read our reviews now, like, you go on Google and you check out our reviews, so many of them mention like, we're also self-service too. We don't have like a lodge or a check-in facility. So many people mention like, I didn't have to talk to anybody. I was actually in the woods. I didn't see an RV with a generator nearby. And those are the things that I think, the small things, but that's what makes somebody choose our park over the park that's 2 miles away with a mini golf course and a hot tub and all these other amenities in a pizza bar,
Well, so let me ask you this question, Jeremy, and I'm not leave this. I'm just playing devil's advocate because I want to get your take on this.
Yeah.
We've long heard this, and maybe Joe, you'll agree with me on this. Like, we've heard this argument, maybe not an argument, a debate, difference of opinion, whatever, in the industry, that there's really two types of parks: 40,000 foot, 60,000 foot view, right? The private parks, the RV parks, with the hot tubs and water slides or the swimming pools and the miniature golf courses, the KOAs, the whatever, and the state parks that love to hate each other, right? Sometimes in our industry. So I'm curious, like, what you're talking about to me, stereotypically, and I know it's different because I know your park, like, not as but better than most people who are listening to the show. Stereotypically sounds more like a state park. So are you a competitor to a state park? And if you are, how do you experience apart from theirs?
Yeah, that's a good question. And honestly, something I hadn't thought too much about. I would say that when we set out to build ours, we just wanted to build an experience that we would have liked. And I would even say, at least in Michigan, state parks are changing dramatically. If you look at like Traverse City State Park, which is the most highest volume state park in the state of Michigan, it is like a private park. There's not a pool, there's not a water park in it, but people are jam packed in there. You're one after another. You got kids ripping around on e-bikes and people that set up for long term at this state park too. And so I would almost say that, like, from my perspective, and again, it's very Michigan and Midwest centric, state parks are becoming more like private parks, and that leaves a gap and an opportunity in that rustic experience. That's what I see here in Michigan.
Yeah, I think for sure Traverse City maybe is, I don't know. I guess I would like to believe that Traverse City is the exception to the rule, but then I've been to Kentucky state parks
Yeah.
and they're same, and that was 10, 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And I've been to Florida state parks and they're kind of the same. So yeah.
Well, I also don't think that a lot of the state parks, the guest experience is not the number one thing always. It obviously depends on the state park, whether or not they're going for that. I mean, they might have that in their non-camping portion of it. But also, Jeremy's sites it's not RV, right? It's tent.
Tent, and then we do cater to like car, truck, tent, or truck, van camping, but no hookups at all. So no electric,
Right.
no sewer. Yeah.
And so I don't know that there's too many state parks that are catering to the glamping experience. So that's something that I think would be. I'm sure they exist. I'm sure there's plenty of them that exist, but I think that would be way outside the norm.
Yeah, I know we have not a state park, but a county park in Marquette County that's added a couple yurts over the last few years, and those are like very popular. But it's a very remote park, so it doesn't see too much volume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Parks Canada does a little bit of that up here. Like, it depends on what you consider glamping, right? Like the Florida state parks we visited 10 years ago had huge houses at some of them you could rent inside the state parks. And then Carter Cave State Park and some of the places in Kentucky had big, huge nice cabins that I remember staying in, like maybe not luxury, but so it depends on what you consider glamping. But yeah, I generally agree with you. That's not the rule; it's the exception.
I think it highlights the point, though, to lean into your niche. If you have that niche with the out in the wild and nobody around you, lean into that with your marketing and everything, because you're going to attract the customers that are looking for that, and they'll become those repeat customers that you're going after. Or if you've got
you
the
have to,
pool and the hot tub and the miniature golf, lean into it.
yeah, you've got to tell your story, right? You got to figure out who your guest is, and then you have to figure out how to tell your story that's a truthful story, but tell your story in a way that enhances your offerings and showcases your guest experience and explains how you're different and says what your why is and why the why is. That's a lot of whys. Why the why is to come to see you or whatever that is. But you understand what I'm saying, right? Like, I mean, there's so many people who like, I've said this so many times, and like people come to me, come to us for marketing and Insider Perks. Who do you want to attract? RVers. What do you mean? Like, that's a lot of people. You got to narrow that down. Like, so I think just taking time to step back and consider that, and you can do a lot of that with AI now. Like, even if you didn't know how to do it before, you can go in and use a tool like a ChatGPT, and you can say, hey, go look at my park and browse my webs and come back and give me all the details on it and tell me what you know about it. Who do you think the ideal customer is who comes here? What are the types of buyer personas that typically would come here? How do I reach those people in marketing? What do I say in my website? What do I say in my email marketing? Like, if you know how to talk to it, you can get a lot of gets that would cost you like tens of thousands of dollars before to hire a pro agency to do this stuff.
And then once you have that repeat customer base, keeping track of them with your CRM, like you mentioned, Jeremy, is then you can go back out and remarket to them and send them emails, reach out to them, give them updates on what's going on to the park, and your cost to acquisition is a lot less than trying to find that new person that's browsing Google and looking for I'm looking for a remote campground in Upper Peninsula, Michigan, maybe with some ice rock climb, that you're going to spend money on those keywords to find that person. But once you do get those repeat customers, remarketing to them is important.
Do you have any kind of CRM built into your camp life, Tyler?
Yeah, we gotta.
Okay, I was just curious because, like, I bet you could ask the question in a room at High or KOA, how many people use a CRM, and they would just look at you and stare, and it'd be like 2 people in the room.
What is a CRM would be the next question.
Yeah.
For those listening, CRM is customer relationship management, and just like a tool to help keep that customer life cycle going. Keeping track of those customers. How many times have they been to your park? How much money, your top customers, how many times do they come a year? How much are they spending? Do you want to offer promotions? We've got several parks that'll do promotions for, if you've stayed over X number of nights a year, you get to book early for the next year. You get early access or different things like that.
Do you have that stuff set up to automatic? Like, I'm throwing you a softball here, Tyler, so you take it and run with it. Like, do you have kind of that stuff set up within Camp Life? Because I think that is important. I don't think every reservation system has that kind of CRM functionality.
It's wonderful for you to ask, Brian. Yes, we do. Yeah.
That's it? I gave you a softball and you're like, yes, we have it. That's it.
Yeah, we do. One of our secret sauces is our business rules engine, where we can set up, different rules for, I want to give all my customers that stayed 10 nights over the last year, I want to give them early access to next year's reservations, or I want to give them a promo, or I want to, you can slice and carve up the data and set up all kinds of different ways that you can interact with those customers and offer benefits and stuff.
How about you, Joe? Anything in your app that helps people do this?
Not directly. I mean, what we're doing the whole time is trying to give your guest a better experience, but we're not really managing the customer. We actually leave that mostly to Tyler, or whatever their PMS software they're using. and CRM software that they're using, because we're not out sending emails and offering stuff like that. We do give the ability for the properties to target certain groups, but not near as we don't keep a lot of data on their users. So,
Greg, do you do any of this at your park? I don't mean to keep forgetting about you, but you're a blank screen, and I forget you're there sometimes.
I'm a black hole, I know. Actually, my wife is my CRM person, and she does a good job. We really, we're talking about what Jeremy was doing, and a lot of focus is on our regular guests. That's what I would call them, because they have become family, and we communicate with them. All of our return guests get extra communications, so they're advised of all the changes we've done throughout the year. They come in with suggestions, and we do changes, and we send them updates on the changes that they suggested have been inputted into the camp. But it's a whole lot more manual process at our end because we're just small. It's the two of us, and we hire a couple seasonal workers, and that's how we maintain our facility. We do try to keep somebody on site, but we're as remote as Jeremy is, as far as, they're coming in, and we want to give them the traditional camping experience is our goal. And so the same way, we don't have the generator stuff, but we do communicate with our past guests and update them about anything that comes up. End of season specials, we do that as well to our regular customers.
Is there any data, and maybe from Joe or Tyler or Jeremy, if you've heard it, or Greg anecdotally talking to other park owners, is there any data about, is there a growing trend for more of the disconnection experience in camping? It's always been there, to be clear. It was the original form of camping, but is there in the sentiment of many park owners, at least in our circles that we run in Ojai and KOA, is that this was going back to a state park, private park, there were always people who did it, but maybe not a big enough audience that was in a growing demographic for me to take advantage of it in a way that Jeremy has. Is there a sense that there's going to be, or has been more of a demand over this over the last few years, and that it's continuing to grow? Because some of that stuff surprises me. Scott and I were doing some research into Gen Z, and there's this kind of ongoing narrative in the industry that Gen Z wants to stay connected, and they want more Wi-Fi, and this is what it takes to get them out to your campground. And when you actually study this stuff and look logically, that's really not what Gen Z wants. They want to be disconnected. They want to not talk to the people at Jeremy's campground. They want to, they have this nervousness, Earl from Black Folks Camp 2, which is now the Unity Folks, that he's expanded his brand into other verticals, probably includes some form of Gen Z too. These people don't know how to camp. They were not taught that. They weren't taken by their parents when they were children, so they're nervous. And a big thing with Gen Z is they don't want to be embarrassed. So I just go ahead, please.
I've seen a couple things that I guess I don't know that anybody's really dove into this, but one, I think, Brian, to your point, Gen Z, right? They do want to always be connected, but then they crave those disconnections as well. And it's a little bit of a dichotomy, and how can you mesh that? I actually don't see a problem. In our park is unique because we're so close to town, yet we're in the woods. And so you have full 5G service at our park, no matter where you are. You are in the woods, you are not in town, but you still have service. So that there's some uniqueness there. And I think people like that because they want to know, hey, I can turn my phone off, but I can also turn it back on and have service if I need to call for help. But I don't see a problem with somebody using their phone to augment an IRL in real life experience. And I think, Joe, I didn't talk to you about this in Kentucky, but I think I was talking to somebody on your team about this. I'm totally happy that if somebody's walking through my campground on my trails using a bird call identifier app to be there's the Kirkland warbler, and holy crap, you can only find that in northern Michigan during these 2 months out of the year. Or, here's this other bird. The Kirkland warbler is the only one I actually know the name of, because I call it the Costco warbler. But like that, those things I'm like totally okay with, and I think it augments the experience, and I'm excited about that stuff, and I think that's like fun. Even with like the geology at my space, we have really cool rocks. Like if you got to use your phone to Google Lens it, like that's cool to me. And I think that's cool to Gen Z too. I don't know because I'm a millennial, but we'll find out, I guess. And then the second thing is like, is that demand there? I don't know that anybody's measured it, but I can tell you this. I combed through both the new book and the camp spot data that got released at the end of the year. And I really just focused on Midwest and Michigan. But one thing that I noticed that stood out heavily to me was the average daily rate for rustic sites versus full hookup sites. It was like a $10 difference. I rent rustic tent sites for $45 a night in Michigan, and the average daily rate for full hookup sites in the state of Michigan was like $60. So it's like, why am I going to spend the money on infrastructure at every site for water, sewer, electric when I can
get. Yeah.
Right. And like I think that speaks to the demand too, right? It's like people are, no longer are people just paying like 10 or $15 a night for a camping experience. Like if they can get a rustic camping experience close to the city and pop in town for dinner, they're going to pay for that convenience,
Well, we've been talking about this a lot recently, and I don't know, data. I haven't seen data on it, but people say people want to disconnect all the time, but the real question is, what are they disconnecting from? Right. So people will use that word all the time to mean a lot of different things. Maybe disconnecting for them means not being behind their laptop working. Maybe it means disconnecting from for us, it would be the hustle of life right now. Like right now, we have 6 children. 3 of them are in club volleyball. And
wait, right now you have children, or you always have 6 children?
Hopefully always.
Okay, sorry.
But our job, like we're driving at all times. And so if I would say we want to disconnect, it's disconnect from our vehicle. So, Brian, you talked about us going to Spain for a year. We're not going to have a car. That's actually one of the big draws is not having a vehicle for a year because we spend way too much time inside of it. And so while people are disconnecting might still mean they want to watch their Netflix show at night. It just means they don't want to be tethered to their phone for work or tethered for another reason.
Yeah, I think one real world example here in Marquette County where I'm at is with our airport. We have an issue with access getting to Marquette County. The closest metro is Green Bay, and that's still like 4 hours away from us. There's this thing like you can fly into Sawyer. It was an international airport, but they renamed it to regional so they could get funding and subsidize the flights. But there's this problem there when you land. Flights are cheaper now, but there's no Wi-Fi at the airport, and we don't have Uber, we don't have Lyft. And so like when our economic development did their study, their last one, they were like, you need Wi-Fi, you need reliable Wi-Fi at the airport. They're like, oh, there is Wi-Fi, but you can't connect to it. But you need reliable Wi-Fi, and then you need rideshare services. And if you don't have those, people are going to be upset. They're coming here, Joe, just like you're saying, to disconnect. They're coming here to go spend a weekend biking around the woods or hiking around the woods, but like they still want the modern day convenience. They want to be able to pick up their phone and call a Lyft or an Uber. They want to call their grandma or their mom or whatever when they're on vacation. And similarly, like, I mean, man, we're fighting our health department right now just to allow us to have water under pressure so we can have flushing toilets and showers. Because while people want those, that rustic experience, after they've been in the woods all day, they want to take a shower, man. They might be here for a bike race and they might be dirty, sweaty, muddy. They want to shower off. They don't want to go to bed covered in that, like it's not always like 100% disconnect. It's to your exact point. It's like, what specific thing are they trying to disconnect from?
I think that's different from everybody too, right? So I think that's why it even more important to not only just figure out, but then your niche, even once you figured it out and niche down, is going to have 20 or 30 different branches of those niches, really infinite, but groupings of where you can talk about, like, I'm here for a bike race, or I'm here to disconnect from work, disconnect from just Netflix, or I'm here to whatever, right? Whatever that reason is.
I got to imagine Greg is similar in Lake Tahoe. It's like, look, you might want to camp, but Lake Tahoe has an amazing food scene. Lake Tahoe has an amazing skiing community. Like, you might want to disconnect and camp, but you want access to all those other things Tahoe has to offer, you know?
Those are true, Jeremy, and we are actually 55 minutes away from having dinner in Lake Tahoe. And we do offer hot showers, and they're used continually on the weekend. And we actually added Starlink last year because of those people that thought they had to be connected, but yet they want the rustic thing because the local state park, they're like all the conversation has gone on earlier. They're back to back. You know, this guy's got a campfire, he's smoking me out. This guy's got a dog barking, he's right in my ear. And we give them space, but they still want that little bit of connection when they want.
Well, they want to make a reservation for the hot restaurant in town, and then take a shower before they go, and then come back to sleep in the woods.
And we do get the Uber. So we've had people that they'll Uber their food out here from town, and it's only a 13-minute drive. But if they can connect, and they'll get an Uber driver to bring them out, they, you know, whatever food they want, they got delivered in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's just putting that thought into your guests. All right, let's do something for the last couple minutes here. We tried this.
I was gonna.
Yeah,
let
go
me
ahead.
jump in real quick, Brian, on some data you asked about, like, to the smaller, more glamping. Do we have data on that? One thing we've seen is in the last couple of years since with COVID, a decrease in the rig size. So in 23, that there was about 16% in our peak months of vehicles that were over 40 feet in length, whereas now we're down to 12% for this past year. So we are seeing a decrease in the percentage of travelers with a vehicle over 40 feet in length.
I think Greg's trying to get on camera. His wife was there enjoying the stream too. So we had that so fun little screech in the ear. Sorry, Tyler, did we cut anything off you were saying at the end?
Oh, I was just saying, for like our peak, looking at it over a monthly basis, a peak month in 23 was 16% of travelers with a vehicle over 40 feet in length, versus 2025, it was down to 12%. So we are seeing.
Wait, that's a big drop for 1 year, isn't it?
From 23 to 25, so it's over 2 years. Period.
Okay. Still, like 4%.
Yeah.
I mean, that's 25%, 16 to 12, right?
Yeah.
Is your peak month? Is your peak month like April and October for that, or April and probably April?
The peak months are like, yes, when the
snowbirds are going home.
Yeah, snowbird travelers.
Right.
When snowbirds are checking in Florida, or if that's based on check-in date, when they're checking in Florida, and checking.
I think Canadian snowbirds were down this year.
Yeah.
And so that could actually have contributed a decent amount to that, because that's a group that has large Class A rigs, pretty heavily, I think.
All right, let's spend the last few years. I started doing this at the conferences, OHI and KOA. We did it last week pretty successfully too. I'll just have everybody go around the room and ask one other person a question. And so the way we do this is we'll pick Greg because he just got on camera last minute. Hi, Greg. Nice to see you.
Hello.
And we'll pick Greg. We'll start with him. So Greg, you're going to ask anybody here a question, really just Jeremy, Tyler, or Joe. Ask them a question. Anything you pick who you want to ask a question to. And then we'll go to elimination. So if Greg asks Jeremy a question, nobody else can ask Jeremy a question.
Why can't
I'm going to go to Tyler because I think you're working with more reservation system. Is that correct?
I own a Camp Life reservation system.
Okay, so it's a reservation system.
Yep.
So we're always looking at ways to enhance our booking opportunity because we don't maintain our own booking system at this point. So we've used people like HipCamp and we use Airbnb one year, different things like that. So I just be interested to know how your system integrates with other systems.
We have an integration with Airbnb. HipCamp, we haven't seen too many requests for that. It's really driven by our customers with where they want us to focus on, but we see about over 50% of our traffic actually just coming from our marketplace, camplife.com, to people making reservations at the different properties.
Okay.
All right, Tyler, your turn. You get to ask a question from either Joe, Greg, or Jeremy.
I'll ask Joe a question. Joe, I understand that you guys just recently expanded to Australia.
Yep.
Is that correct? Can you tell me a little bit, what do you think the similarities and differences are between the U.S. market and the Australian market when it comes to camping?
Yeah, I think they're quite similar. The look is a little different, so less pads. So you might be a little more on grass. Your camping will be on grass as opposed to on pads a lot of times. I mean, just like here, they have a mix of long-term and short-term stays. They definitely have some interesting things that we never see here that a campground owner here would. Most of them would say never, like annexes. They're like tents that come off the side of your rig, and so it makes you a little like sunroom area. We've never seen that here, and a ton of people had it at those campgrounds. But I might say a little less amenity crazy as we do here, but some campgrounds are definitely close. We have a customer in Sandstone Point. They have a huge water park, and we've seen quite a few of those that exist. So I think it's not that much off. Now, New Zealand, that's a little more, a little less amenity rich. Actually, a decent amount less amenity rich than what is offered in Australia or here. You definitely have things that have those amenities. But it's just that was what I noticed, at least.
You're going over there again, Joe, in May?
Yes, we'll be going to Australia again in May. The show down there was great for us. It's a lot of fun. The people are very enjoyable. Long flight for being in a trade show for a full week, but it was good for us. So we'll definitely go back.
I think I've finally convinced my girlfriend to let me go there in May. So I've been trying to go for like 4 or 5 years. But it coincides with her birthdays on May 9th, so it's always like right before overlapping the conferences. So I've always prioritized her birthday, but I think I've convinced her, like, I will give you a great Australian vacation if you just let me go there for a week.
Luckily, my wife is part of the business, so for the 4 years in a row that I missed our anniversary for Carvik, she was okay with it. So
I don't know if I'm that brave, but good for you. Okay.
Well, she was fine with it because it was part of our business as well. So now we have other people that can go to that. So
all right, Joe, Greg or Jeremy?
So Jeremy, I think I have this. Actually, was what I was going to use for Brian asked, "What's new? What are you seeing more of?" And so one of the things that I'm seeing a lot more of is smaller parks or glamping parks that are offering, they don't have a ton of amenities, but they're offering a lot of catered, like high quality food catered amenities. And even larger parks now are doing this where they have a limited supply of charcuterie boards or a limited supply of this special dinner that they're going to offer from their chef. And so, you're a little more rustic, I think, than would a lot of these would be. But for the glamping type, is that something you've thought about? Is that something you've seen? And what do you think?
Yeah, food is a big focus for us. We are a rural community. We do have a lot of farmers, but it's very seasonal farming. We're seeing more farm to table restaurants popping up. a good friend of mine actually just opened a farm. He's a pretty renowned chef on the West Coast, but moved back home to the Midwest. But he's living in Two Harbors, Minnesota now, and he just opened a farm so that he can build. He's starting with the farm, but then he plans to build the cafe, and then he plans to build the hospitality component as well. And so he's starting at step one, literally ground zero, the ground. But he plans to add all that in. And, I think we even have Michelin starred chefs, James Regato from Detroit. I always forget her name, but she ran Alinea down in Chicago, now has a property just right over by Kearney, actually, Tyler. Amazing spot that like you can't even get into. You got to book like a year out, and it costs like $1,500 a night. And that $1,500 a night comes with meals, so it's like that full experience.
Right.
I don't think we'll ever be at that level. I don't have a Michelin star. I can't command those prices. But at the same time, that's something we think about, and something that I think as we grow, maybe year 5, 6, 7, I would love to add that in. We're lucky that across our 80 acres, we have about 3 acres that are kind of adjacent to our campground that are on the main highway, US 41, which runs from the Upper Peninsula all the way down to the Florida Keys, longest continuous highway in the United States. But we've got this commercial frontage on 41 that like, I want to build a full hospitality concept, from health and wellness and spa to that food aspect. So it's like, how do you blend that? How do you keep that rustic experience, unique in the woods, but then bring those modern amenity in? And I don't have the answer, but I do think about it, and I want to figure it out,
Oh.
All right, Jeremy, you are led by process of elimination with Greg. So
yeah, Greg, I'm curious. You mentioned you are utilizing the main marketplaces. You said HipCamp and Airbnb. One, 2-part question. One, do you prefer HipCamp or Airbnb? And then 2, do you plan to move to direct bookings on your own website anytime soon?
Our goal is to do that. We don't plan to do it soon. Actually, we added stay list to our venue and traded off Airbnb because it was useless. And HipCamp, although they started us and really have helped us, but their fees have gone just through the roof this year. So they're up in fees to us as a host and to customers. And that's kind of making me think about looking at other stuff. Maybe we move into the direct booking right away. It just requires more hands-on timing. And with the fact that it's, just the wife and I, as far as the booking goes, it would be more hands-on time sitting at that computer dealing with the booking until we master that avenue, I guess.
Yeah. What was the name of the park again?
We're Camp Nauvoo, Nauvoo, and it's not the one in Illinois. It's Camp Nauvoo in California. Okay,
I'll check it out. And I would say, man, like I'm all about getting as much awareness as possible. But I mean, even after year 1, we're like 99% direct bookings, and once you do get that system in place, it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. You guys, it sounds like you had to build your whole infrastructure because you're still working the toilet channel. We came with flush toilets when we got there. So
yeah, I'll see you in 3 years with the flush toilets.
Good luck on that one, man. It helps a lot.
Yeah.
All right, final thoughts, Tyler, and then where can they find out more about camp life?
Yeah, Greg, you should check out using direct bookings with somebody. The cost is way down, and the ease of just taking online reservations is great.
Out of all the PMS systems, Tyler, who would you recommend?
I would recommend Camp Life, but I will admit I am partial. If you want to learn more about Camp Life, software.camplife.com.
Thank you so much for being here, Tyler. Appreciate it. Joe, final thoughts, and then where can they learn more about AppMet Community?
Yeah, I'm impartial on the PMS booking systems. I try to be, at least. I tell everybody to talk to them all, figure out which one works for you and which one doesn't. I do try to relay information I've heard. Like, one of the things I'll say, what I always hear about camp life is their support's amazing. So that's what I typically tell people when they're asking different questions about the different PMS systems. But anyway, yeah, you can find more about At My Community at mycommunity.com.
Thanks, Joe, for being here. Jeremy, where can they find Kona Hills, and any final thoughts?
Yeah, campconahills.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Jeremy Johnson, Cannabis and Campgrounds. That's the tagline.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Jeremy. Looking forward to 2026, talking to you some more. And then Greg, last but not least, where can they find out more about your park in Lake Tahoe, not Illinois?
Camp Nauvoo, Placerville.com.
Thank you for being here, Greg. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining us for another episode of MC Fireside Chats. If you're not sick and tired of hearing from me, I will be on Outwired in 58 minutes or so with Scott Barr and our first guest that we've ever had on Outwired, Ari Smith, who runs a luxury glamping resort, I think in Vermont. I probably should know that before I have an hour before the show starts, so I can research that.
I'm studying.
But he's a really good guy who spoke at the glamping show, went to MIT, I think, and is really big in robotics and is doing some really cool stuff at his property with custom things that he's building. So excited to talk to him on Outwired as our first guest ever. If not, we will see you next week on another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Really appreciate you guys, and have a wonderful 2026 if we don't talk again.
Right.
Thanks,
everyone.
Cool.
Bye.
Thanks, Brian.
MC Fireside.